Hey, what's going on? What's going on, CoinOpTV subscribers? Robert Welkner here with a very exciting episode paying tribute to Disney Infinity. We've got one of the producers from Disney Interactive, Mathew Solie, is going to help talk us through some of the top 5 sort of if you only knew these things were happening. So, hey, Matt, good to see you, sir.
It's good to see you too, Rob. Yeah, so disclaimer, this is just stuff I knew and, fun little anecdotes from when I worked at Disney last year.
If you guys run an article or do something with this video, please, link back, credit CoinOpTV, and of course Matt as well, so we can give Matt a shout out. So, all right, let's start.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's start with. Let's also mention that if you hear noises in the background, that's your little doggy running around.
That's my dog Charlotte, and she has a fascination with rubber chickens. Charlotte, please.
It's not like a fire alarm or anything like that.
No, it's her demanding attention because good news, she's a smart dog. Bad news, she's a smart dog. And if I could only show you the fun setup I had to do with Rob in order to get this Skype call working, where we unsuccessfully had an iPad, an Xbox One, and now I'm on a 6 Plus doing this. So, all right, top 5. So, disclaimer, once again, this is just fun stuff I know, and doesn't really matter anymore since, unfortunately, Disney Infinity has gone the way of the dodo. But for number 5, this one's really close to my heart, Black Suit Spider-Man. So, you guys may or may not remember, but Black Suit Spider-Man first appeared as a physical figure inside the Vita version, which was really exciting. I worked on the Vita version. That was one of mine. And it was a huge selling point. It was awesome. The fun part of the story about Black Suit, I was telling Rob just a little bit ago. So we had gotten the game done. We had gotten it passed through submission. We were manufacturing. It was going out to the public. And literally, like about a week before, someone decided to put the Black Suit Spider-Man down on like a 360 or the PlayStation 3 version. He didn't work. That's sort of a big problem when you have physical toys. What had happened was, just with everything, Infinity, everything's massive. So not everyone at Avalanche knew we were doing a physical Spider-Man figure. So we were calling them going, hey, Black Suit Spider-Man doesn't work. And they're like, of course it does. He's not like a real figure. He's like a power disc. We're like, no, he's a real figure. We manufactured a bunch of these. So, fortunately, the Avalanche guys were awesome, and they slammed a patch in just before Black Suit Spider-Man came out with the Vita, and that's why he works on the console. But yeah, that's sort of a fun insider baseball-y story that we all got to laugh about when it was all said and done and wrapped up, not when it was immediately happening.
So, Matt, let me ask you to follow up on that. So, if you guys couldn't fix this with a patch, was the workaround going to be just to ship a Vita with every Black Suit Spider-Man so that people can play it? Was that going to be the expensive workaround?
That would, in production linguistics, that would be the worst option known to man. No, what ended up was the backup plan was we as you remember, we released so many patches every year, we would just roll it into the next one, but the good news was how the system that they put in place for the actual figures and adding them to patches was relatively easy. The only thing that was sacrificed, if I remember correctly, was the skill tree. They didn't have a Black Suit image in the skill tree. It was the red and blue suit. And then also I know that Murphy, who was one of the head character guys, was really bummed out because he really wanted Black Suit Spider-Man as a physical figure to have a completely different moveset. And unfortunately, because everything was slammed together at the last minute, we were unable to do that. So that's sort of another fun insidery thing was for a hot minute, we were actually going to test it with Black Suit Spider-Man where we were going to put in a 2.0 moveset. So when you put him down in a future version of the game, he would have a completely different moveset from blue and red suit. So you got a little bit of a double one with this top 5, this number 5 right here.
Okay.
So, but I totally forgot about that until I started talking about it because I remember Murphy and I we were talking about it. Like I was literally out front of my place and I'm like, hey, we should pitch this. It's a 2.0 moveset. We could use it as an experiment and everyone would be happy. Unfortunately, time and tide with no man, we couldn't get it done in time.
All right, let's go. So that sounds great. I'm glad that there's 2 Spidey figures there. All right, so let's move on to number 4. There, I get the fake drum rolls or something like that, but there you go.
So number 4, this was actually sort of a really fun one. We researched for a long time, but ultimately we just never were able to figure out a really good way to pull it off. And that was 3D printed figures. We actually had done a ton of research, and actually I'm really interested because I know Skylanders is doing it with Imagineers now, where you can actually get your figure 3D printed. I haven't seen one yet, so I don't know how cool they are and stuff like that, but that was something we had kicked around for years and years and years, trying to figure out a good way to make them substantial enough where they wouldn't break in transit or just look low quality, because that was the other big thing about Disney figures, is they were always such high quality. But that was sort of a fun thing that was researched. I spent some time researching on it. Mark Orgel, if you remember him, he spent a good chunk on it. So yeah, it was just all over the board. Various people were doing it, but yep, that was number 4. We never got 3D printed figures.
So with Skylanders Imagineers, they're printing up original figures that you create. Was the idea that they're going to be original figures, or were they just going to be like bonus, like add-on 3D printed figures, like Disney property?
Well, there was 2 ideas. One where it could be like a alternative pose or something, I believe, was one idea that was kicked around. Now, remember, this is 4 years of like sporadic stuff, so if I misquote, I misquote. The other one that was sort of fun was, remember the little blockheads, the townspeople?
Yes.
We had debated about you could make a custom version of that to make it look like you, because we got pretty far along in the customization system of those, where you can make them look really cool and 3D print those. But then again, we also ran into the problem where stuff would break off. Even though they were a block form, if you had like a hat or something, it could break off. But we never actually got to the point of printing those. But that was an idea that was kicked around for a little while. It was sort of something cool and fun.
Oh yeah, that would be cool to get little the townspeople get a 3D printed of Pirate Steve and some of the people that were made into townspeople. That would be cool to get figures of that.
Yeah, and that was the thinking of that when we were talking about it. That's like 2.5 years ago, I think. Not to toot our own horn. Like I said, I still want to see the one that Skylanders did, because the fact they pulled it off is awesome. Because it's a little bit of a logistics nightmare. But yeah, that was definitely a really, really fun experiment that was done during the time on Infinity.
I haven't seen the Skylander one in person, but I think it's sort of like a fragile, like a sand foam or something material that is...
in a case.
Yeah, it comes in a case so that you don't really drop it. It's more of a display item. So I still got to order one of those. When I get one of those, I'll bring it by. We'll check it out, investigate it.
Cool. Yeah, I know. I've been bad because since Infinity's gone, when all the whole new stuff for like Lego and like Skylanders came out, I just sort of didn't touch them, because normally we did research every year, because we'd be like, okay, what cool thing do they have? But totally missed Imagineers this year, so I haven't had even a chance to play it yet. So definitely, if you get one printed, let me know. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, let's get that. I got to get one going soon. So okay, let's move on to number 3.
Number 3, drum roll. So throughout the entirety of Infinity, we've always said anything could possibly happen. Anything can go into Disney Infinity. So no big shocker here. One of the years ago, one of the playsets that we were considering doing around the 3.0 timeline, 3.5 timeline, whatever, was an Alice playset based off the current movies that were done by Tim Burton. So Through the Looking Glass type stuff like that. It's not really spoilery, and I don't think it's a real big shocker. Just with how we describe how we made decisions with Infinity, like whether it would be cool gameplay, it'd be fun to do, if it could synergize with the company. Look, I use synergy. I'm still a producer. So it probably doesn't come as any big surprise that years ago when we were debating like Dory or this potentially like an Alice playset or something, that existed for a hot minute. But that was as far as it went. It was just a discussion point at the very, very high level in Salt Lake City with all the big mucky mucks. But that was sort of a fun one where people started taking sides on whether it should be like a Dory playset or if it should be this one or if it should be that one. So that was sort of like a fun little thing. But as you could probably guess, I could probably name every IP that's come out in like the last 5 years, and they've all wanted to be in Infinity, which is awesome, and scary and terrifying at the same time. And actually, I'll add like sort of a fun little side story to this one. I think I told you this one, Rob. Back when we did Infinity 1 and we were going into Infinity 2, remember Kenneth Branagh directed the live-action Cinderella?
Yes.
They came to us and they're like, can we please get stuff in Infinity? Can we get a figure? Can we get this? And we're like, what would Cinderella play like? We don't know. It's like, and it was, Cinderella came out in between Infinity 1 and 2, like in the holiday. So we're like, where would it go in the end of Infinity 1 or Infinity 2? So it was like one of those fun ones where we thought about it for a hot minute, but it just didn't make sense. But yeah, you can imagine everything wanted to be in Infinity for a hot minute. So that's what's sort of crazy, and that's why it's not really spoilery to say like, hey, we thought about doing an Alice playset for about 5 minutes and then went another direction.
Okay, so Alice in Wonderland potential, or you spent some time. What about, for me, the big ball that was dropped was not having a Frozen playset. How much time or discussion was a Frozen playset discussed, if it was?
So it was one of those fun ones that kept coming back to it. It's sort of like Gravity Falls. So when we did the Frozen characters, this is 4 years ago we decided to do them, 5 almost. And we had seen only previews of the movie Frozen, and just like Pixar fully admits this, they do a lot of iteration on their films. It was a completely different film, so we're like, okay, like Elsa makes sense, Anna doesn't really make sense, but let's give it a whirl and try to do it. We had no idea it was going to be that big, and that like influential and stuff like that, but and then after that, the debate kept coming up, even from an executive level who had daughters and stuff, like, where's my Frozen playset? And we were like, guys, like, we have to get going on this 2.0 thing. We have like less than a year to make it, and we already decided we wanted to do it on Marvel. Does it make sense to do a Frozen thing? Because we're going to have to pull away from Marvel, but we've been instructed that it has to be Marvel all the time. So it never connected, unfortunately. But yeah, it would have been cool, to say the least. I've, 100% Norwegian. I would love to see more Frozen stuff. But yeah, it was definitely, it was a bummer. And it also, I remember it confused so many people, because remember it came in that certain packaging that looked like a playset.
Yeah.
And I remember like people were just upset about that. And it's like, well, we specifically call out it's not a playset, and like it has discs. It doesn't have the whole thing, but it was still, people were still getting used to what Infinity was. They thought every character had a playset, and maybe on our part that was bad, because anything we introduced character-wise in the very beginning had a playset, so it was just assumed, I'm guessing. As a person that worked on it for about a year and a half before we even announced it, we always knew, it's like, oh yeah, we can't do a playset for everything. This game would take 20 years to make. So it was such a bummer. I wish we could have done playsets for everything, to be honest.
Yeah, that was whenever I was at an event, I was always like, just give us a playset for everything. I'm unrealistically wanting this,
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's one of those, until you get deep into like game development and seeing how everything comes together, it's one of those crazy ones. Like you just don't, it's like, it's such a monumental undertaking. Basically, like when we did Infinity 1, that's like 6 feature films crammed into one game. Because each one of those playsets was like 4 to 5 hours, and it was just insane. Hence why we never got quite back up to that 6, because we had several years before we announced that we were developing before we went to that point.
All right, so if you guys are Tim Burton, Alice in Wonderland fans, they did release 3 figures that those look like very stunning figures, and if you're Frozen fans, you can pick up the figures for Anna and Elsa. So just no play sets to go along with those, but awesome looking figures. All right, speaking of figures, let's talk about eBay's hottest property in number 2 here.
Peter Pan. So that was a bummer one. So that was a character that was well into development and had gone about a little over 3/4 of the way done. He was near completion. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out to release him. That's bummer to the fans, and I know like people on the team always felt bad about that. But yeah, no, he had all of his cool stuff, like he could fly. He had his knife combat, which was a lot of fun. And it was very playful, like the original cartoon back, oh God, I don't remember the year anymore. That's what happens when you're not living in Disney stuff every day. You keep forgetting stuff all the time. But yeah, no, he had all the cool moves that you were going to expect, so that was sort of a bummer. And also, this is a tidbit of warning. If you somehow do get a hold of a Peter Pan figure, and you decide to put him on the base for Disney Infinity 3.0, he will not work, FYI. I know that there was some people thought that it would work, and it's like, no, we never got the code in, so he's not recognized at all. So FYI, you are buying a statue if you are going at it. It's not an IGP, an interactive game piece. It is just a statue.
So do we know, I know there's been 2 that I've seen go up on eBay. Is there a rough idea of how many are floating around? Is that a secret of how many's floating around there in the wild?
We actually don't know. So from one of the, I can't remember if it was the one that was before Christmas or after Christmas. I think, and this is my personal theory, I have nothing to back this up. I think it was someone from one of our factories in China got a hold of a couple, because if I remember right, the handle on eBay was something in Chinese. So it could be possible that one of the factory people grabbed a couple of them and now they're putting them up on eBay. Possible. We've had that happen in the past, where we had people take samples that were supposed to be destroyed, and then they put it on the Chinese equivalent of eBay, except that was really easy to track them down. So it would make more sense if someone was trying to do that. They would sell it, if they're in China, sell it in America off our eBay, so it's harder to track them. But that's my personal theory. I have nothing to back that up with.
All right. All right, let's before we get to number 1, let's quickly recap here. So number 5 was the craziness of the black suit Spider-Man from Vita to console.
Yep.
Number 4 was potentially maybe 3D printed figures. I like the idea of townspeople. That would have been fun. Number 3 was potentially Alice Through the Looking Glass, or Tim Burton Alice sort of play set there. Number 2, how far along Peter Pan was in development. And number 1, exciting times. What do you got for us, Matt?
Okay, so this one is it's fun insider baseball, but everyone remembers Trongate, right? So Trongate was what happened when we released Korra and Sam Flynn early on the PC version. Now, remember, we had all the intention to put these on physical figures. It was something nice to boost our PC sales by offering a unique figure. For people unfamiliar with Trongate, what happened next was a social media storm where everyone started freaking out that we were going to make content that they couldn't get on the console versions or physically, and so on and so forth, which led to many a sad night for anyone on social media on the team, because it was not a good scene. What had been happening in the background was the idea of making an exclusive figure for the PC version or the iOS version was sort of hiked up. So for a bit there, the team actually was developing a digital version for Clue. There was two reasons probably why this never saw the light of day, but it's a fun little anecdote, and I'm a Tron fan, so I don't really care if I'm revealing something that was never announced.
You actually have some Tron history, didn't you? Produce a
Yes.
Tron game years ago?
Yeah, Tron Evolution with John Vignacchi.
Yeah,
that was the first. Technically the second project we had worked on together. I worked on Pirates of the Caribbean: Armada of the Damned for about a month before they canceled it with JV, and then I transitioned to Tron full time.
So is there concept art? Will there be a Clue sketch popping up on somebody's portfolio page on LinkedIn or anything like that?
I would have thought so. Basically, from what I remember, because he was developed, he was made, and then I think he even had a super move in too, because this was 2.0. It was just one of those things that fell through the cracks. And yeah, he was fully rendered in the game. He had a rough move set, and I believe he had a thing where he could do sort of like Nick Fury, where he could duplicate himself. and have multiple versions of himself running around, I think. But that was like a whole thing where at the time they were making the super move and getting him all set, they decided to pivot and not do CLU for obvious reasons, the Tron Gate stuff, and also just, I think, time at that point. Because it was always, with Infinity, it was always a battle for resources. Like, do we want to dedicate 3 guys doing a CLU figure for, PC only, or do we want those 3 guys redirected working on a Star Wars figure for, the original trilogy in 3.0? So it's one of those tough ones where it just fell through the cracks. I'm surprised it never came out sooner, because, I mean, it wasn't a big, it was not a big shocker internally. It was just one of those like, oh yeah, CLU, whatever happened to him? So I figured, why not? I can throw that little small tidbit out there and leave the most of the good juicy stuff for JV on that book he's going to write someday about the history of Infinity.
Well, if JV is writing a book, you got to make sure you do the intro, the preface, so that you can get all your little secret eggs right there in the beginning of the book, in the chapter before anybody gets to his content.
Well, and the whole thing too is like, I would actually love to read it, because you have to remember JV was a vice president at the Walt Disney Company. He was like way, way, way up there. So I mean, he had conversations that I probably have never even heard of. About stuff that I didn't even know was happening. We got lucky a lot early on, because no one really knew, because the project was so big, we had to be so tight-knit with everything, so we sort of knew everything that was going on, which actually, if you'll let me, I'll give you a bonus fact for your top 5.
Sure.
So, back on Infinity 1.0, remember we had crystal figures?
Yes.
They
started with the first one was from Cars. Yeah, that they were Toys R Us. Yeah, I remember these. Lightning McQueen was the first one. I was trying to remember with the Cars there.
Buzz Lightyear, Sully, Jack Sparrow, Mr. Incredible, the Lone Ranger, and Agent P.
Okay.
I'm impressed. I remembered all those. So, guess how many different versions of, before we came onto the crystal figure versions of Infinity, do you think we actually had?
Like how many different crystal variations?
Oh, any type of variation.
10. I'll say 10, but let's just kind of throw it out there.
You're very close, actually. I think it was close to 10. So,
okay.
Because the whole thing was they were having difficulty figuring out what was the best one that kids were responding to. So eventually we took all these different ideas, moved them, and had kids go, oh, I want that one, and it turned out being the crystal ones. But the one version I remember that was the coolest was they actually did black and white versions of Mr. Incredible, Jack Sparrow, and Sully. So they looked like they were like in a black and white movie. And if you remember Jeff Bunker, he was the studio art director at Avalanche. He had a great idea that when you put the figures down, it would turn the entire world, like the toy box, black and white.
Oh, okay.
Like an old-timey cartoon. But unfortunately, kids didn't like the black and white idea, and I think we also saved Jeff Bunker and his art team from going insane, because if they would have had to make like a new thing where everything turned black and white, they probably would have gone insane, because this was Infinity 1. So remember, we kept shuffling stuff in until the last minute, and it was just insanity, and everyone's like, we can't do anymore. Like, it's insane. So yeah, that's the sort of fun one. We had multiple versions of what would eventually become crystal figures. Many, many variations. There even was a really funny version where they were all like super shiny silver. And unfortunately, they looked like they came out of a Puff Daddy video. So that one never went anywhere. But yeah, there was a lot of fun ones. Hopefully JV got to keep the prototypes, but I'm assuming he did.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I'd like to see the bling bling version, the black and white, the glow in the dark, the
Yeah. The glow in the dark Buzz Lightyear. Oh, that would have been awesome.
So, well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate you sort of opening up to explaining some of these little things. Matt and I are actually going to do another episode that I'm going to title What Could Have Been, and it'll be another top 5 episode talking about things that were really like early in the thought process and the bubble and the brainstorming. This was like this episode was more for like, hey, this stuff was on the table, there was firm conversations about it. So thanks a bunch, Matt. Yeah, I look forward to, if you decide to write a book or something like that, about your experiences. Like, I look forward to reading that too.
I'm leaving that one to JV. He's got that one on lockdown. He's been talking about it for years, so hopefully he's been working on it.
Awesome. Well, you guys, CoinOpTV subscribers, Disney Infinity fans, of course, if you didn't know, you can still buy all these toys and these games. They're very discounted now, and they still all work and play and fun. If you're watching this, a few years from now, check those out. They're tons of fun. It was great collecting the figures and the power discs. So let us know in the comments below what you thought of some of these reveals and some of this information. If you heard it here first and you share this, please credit us, link back to this video so we can show some love. So thanks a bunch for watching for CoinOpTV. We'll see you guys next time.